I am going to deal with gamma, and I'm going to deal with gamma with a mindset and a filter that it has a major impact with regard to emotions. So let's take a look and think about the role of emotions. And here's some takeaways that I really want. I want you to think more about gamma, obviously, because it's not part of DX, it's not part of our indexing, and so it's something that gets ignored quite often. But I think there's a place for it, it's there. Turn the dials, take a look at it once in a while. I think you're going to find some interesting things. So really, as we move along, do think about that. When I'm working with people in my world, in the assessment world, I find that most people have no clue how decisions are made, and they don't realize the role of emotions in their decisions. And the fact that gamma is an indicative component of those emotions, and so they become puppets. We all are, to a certain extent. So we want to recognize what that role really looks like. Some of the objectives for today is I want to explore the integration of two research paradigms. I live in a schizoid world where I'm the director of research, and there are 4 of us, and 2 are full-time mathematicians doing statistics, period. And then there's Dustin and I on the other side of the world that are looking at the same assessments, but we're looking at them from a neurological standpoint. So today I want to tie those 2 worlds together a little bit and see what that might look like. So I have a passion, and Tom has ignited that passion in me about some of the things we're discovering about people. I have enough people here that I think I want to spend 5 minutes reviewing the protocols and the concept behind what we're looking at, because this gamma asymmetry protocol is on your screen, it's available, so I just want to go over what the research says and what it looks like. So recognize that if you're working with BrainMaster, you get this lovely screen that is already giving you lots of quantitative data. It's giving you all of the maps from delta through high beta, but you also have gamma there. Even though it's not part of DX, it's there, and you need to look at it once in a while. And especially by looking in the prefrontal cortex and looking at that asymmetry that might be occurring in the front of the brain. I think that could be exciting. So all we've done, and again, this is just for a review, is that while we're collecting the data, we've been able to put in, with the help of BrainMaster, we've been able to put in markers on channels 23 and 24 that allow us to turn on a screen in front of them with a trigger, something we want them to respond to, and to turn it off. And we know precisely where that trigger is located. So then we take those sections that are trigger on, and we analyze them, and we find these 3 generalizations. So we either find a person has mentally an aversion to a concept, and it looks like this. And imagine, of course, the eyes are looking at you in this case, so the avoidance is actually on the right side of the brain, right? Red, gamma right. We also see some people, this is my poker face, by the way. So we see people that have somewhat of a neutral reaction. And it's flaring, on both sides, back and forth, but it's really not dominant aversion. Then we see some people that seem to come in and have this left hemisphere. And the left hemisphere is shown in this manner. So we have these 3 different, and I'm generalizing, but just in terms of a big picture, we're seeing these 3 variations on the theme that can occur. I want to tell you that when people come into our lab, I want them to understand what we do. And so one of the things we usually do is we ask them if they want to do some custom items to see that, because I've got a reason for them to be in the lab. I run some protocols that I'll share with you. One of the things we do, though, is we spell their name correctly and incorrectly. So the correct spelling, sure enough, left hemisphere flare, and we do the incorrect, and it's right hemisphere flare. And they start, oh, this stuff must work. So it's sort of interesting. We also have some people, and I want to share this because it's sort of fun. So here's a negative reaction to smoking. This is a person that does not smoke, right? On the other hand, everybody should be averse to smoking. And this is a person who smokes. And I would say, you better have a meaningful conversation for this person if you want them to stop smoking, because they like smoke. They like it. And it has implications. Now, I was sharing this, and of course, I got this statistics group, Eric and Robert, who know nothing about this, and they don't buy into it all that much either. And so, Eric is a Marine, 18 years in the Marines. 18 years of chewing tobacco. And then he gets this job in our lab and there's no place to spit. And so he thinks maybe he ought to quit. About that time, this is a year ago, he said, I'm going to quit. So I said, well, let's take a look at your brain while we're playing around with that. Just a month after he stopped. So the concept of tobacco was the trigger. And take a look at this brain. So first of all, he's got a major flare on both hemispheres. The concept of tobacco, it just creates an emotional upheaval. But if you look across there, you're still seeing some interesting findings as he moves across. He sees that maybe there should be an aversion, and it's interesting, but here's what's fun. He asked me the other day, it's been a year. Can we look at my brain? So Tuesday of this week, and Dustin sent this to me yesterday, here's what happened on Tuesday. All right, not as much of an issue, not as big of an issue, is it? On the other hand, look where the red is showing up as you move across. Is it on the right or left side? Remember the brain's looking? Yeah. He isn't chewing, but he still likes it. All right? So we can control our behaviors, folks. We don't have to be puppets to our asymmetry. And it's sort of fun. So think about implications now. If you have somebody you're working with an addiction, find out where their brain is on that addiction. Just go to the trouble today, look at some of this asymmetry that's occurring and see what you have. I've been working recently with teams, and I'm starting to realize that within a team, this asymmetry works too. Because when you're working with a team, you have individuals that are engaged. And when I'm looking for the day when we can actually have neural nets on everyone in a team simultaneously. And imagine that I'm looking at this data and I see, yeah, that one's engaged. This one's okay. They're just not actively participating, but they're not offended by anything. This one's disengaged. This one is conflicted about what's going on in the team. And we all know what this one looks like. This is the one that is just offended by the whole concept. And this is going on in your teams all the time. And it's an asymmetry that's right in front of you if you can read it. It's there. So early on, we did a behavioral experiment, again, just to show you what I'm up to in my world. And we had people fill out an assessment, and they have to rank what they are, 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1 being the most like them, 4 being the least like them. I'm sharing this only because 84% of the time I can match what they put on a survey with their first choice. I can't really do any better than 50-50 on 2 and 3. But it's exciting what happens on 4. In other words, we know what we're not. And that's I want to reinforce that with you. We know what we're not. This aversion to something is so crucial in our decision making that it dominates much of our life. We know what we don't want. So recognize that that's showing up again in your prefrontal cortex. It's the strongest reaction that we get, is aversion, what you're not. All right? Now, in my world, we do these assessments. They're self-reporting assessments. I mean, by definition, who's going to believe something that's self-reporting? You could say anything you want. And that is a criticism about these assessments, so we have to recognize that. So the statistics people get carried away, and they run reliability involving test, retest, and internal consistency, and then they do these validity tests, and they do content validity and evidence of relationships with other variables, internal structure validity, and response processing validity. I'm going to come back to that one. And they do evidence of consequences in the report, which is like face value, whether people agree with the report. So all this data is being collected on populations. And so they run these kinds of tests. They run item difficulty, discrimination, average inter-item correlations, correlated item total correlations, and internal consistency measures, and temporal, which is just really test-retest, consistency. Generalizable theory applied to test-retest, and maybe my favorite, factor analysis followed by graded response process. All this data is being collected on each of these assessments on thousands of people. As a result of that, we have the other side of the world. So all of these tests that they're running tell them what's going on with the assessment. Not one of their assessments tell us why. And I'm trying to figure out why people do what they do. So I want to differentiate these two. So as a result, this grounded third-person paradigm looks like this. Commercials will never affect my own judgment. It only affects others. That's the third-person effect. So when you're working with people and you start to talk about others, it never is about self. Take advantage of this when you're working with clients and personalize this and make it real for them. You already do this, but in my world, that's a no-no because they want to stay in the third-person world. They don't want to talk about the power of I. And I is a very powerful. I is more powerful than my or myself. When you use the word I, it is a uniqueness that is unique to you in a conversation. So start recognizing the power of first person in what we do.